$100 a month is the most embarrassingly small amount of money anyone has ever quietly gotten rich from. Two friends, both 24, both pulling in $42,000 a year at jobs they would not describe as their calling. Same apartment complex in some perfectly average American city, same student loan balances, same Sunday night anxiety, same dating apps, same gym membership they fully intend to use. From the outside, you cannot distinguish these two people from each other. Jump ahead 40 years. One of them is sitting on a porch they paid cash for, retired at 62, glancing at a brokerage account sitting at $632,000. The other one is 64, still punching in, refreshing a 401k balance at his kitchen table on a Tuesday night, and running the math on exactly how many more years he has to keep showing up. Same income the entire time. No inheritance, no windfall, no lucky break. The only thing that separated these two lives was $100 a month and one specific moment around year 9 that I'm going to walk you through. My name is Nick, and I probably spend more time than is healthy thinking about why one boring auto pay decision at 24 quietly outperforms decades of, I'll get serious about it when I'm making more money. If that's a sentence that sounds familiar, hit subscribe and like this video. It helps me keep making these. That moment around year 9 is the entire point. Stay with me. Let me show you the math first, because the math is the part that makes everybody uncomfortable. You invest $100 a month, every single month. You do not increase it. You do not do anything clever. You do not try to pick individual stocks. You put it into an S&P 500 index fund, the boring one, the one your uncle who reads Money Magazine has been telling everyone about at Thanksgiving for 15 years, and then you forget it exists. At an 8% annual return, which is actually below the real historical average of the S&P 500, here is what happens. After 10 years, you have $18,000, and I already know what you're thinking. 18 grand in a decade. That's the big promise. That's what all this is about. Hang on, stay right here, because this is the exact spot where about 90% of people mentally check out and walk away. And the next number is where it actually gets hard to believe. After 20 years, you have $58,900. You put in $24,000 of your own money. The market handed you $35,000 on top of that, more than you ever contributed yourself. After 30 years, $149,000. You contributed $36,000. The market gave you the other $113,000. After 40 years, $351,000. You put in $48,000 total across 4 decades. The market handed you $303,000 for the basic act of not panicking and pulling it out. And if you run that same math at the S&P 500's actual long-run average of roughly 10%, you end up at $632,000. $632,000 from $100 a month. You contributed less than the price of a slightly used Toyota Camry and ended up with the price of a house in most parts of this country. And before you bring up the obvious objection, yes, inflation takes a cut of that. The S&P 500's real inflation-adjusted return runs closer to 7%. At 7% real, that $100 a month over 40 years still delivers $262,000 in today's purchasing power. Cash sitting under a mattress, by comparison, loses roughly 70% of its value over the same stretch of time. Not investing is not playing it safe. Not investing is just a very slow, very polite way of getting robbed. So here is where I tend to lose a chunk of the audience, because if all of this is true, and it is, the math is just the math, then the obvious question is, why isn't everybody doing it? And the answer is genuinely annoying. People don't do it because $100 feels like an insult. It feels like showing up to a 5-star restaurant with a Tupperware container. You look at the number, and your brain immediately concludes that cannot be enough to matter. So people wait. They wait until they have more coming in, until life settles down a bit, until they're actually ready to get serious about it. But here is what is actually happening during every month of that wait. There's a term in behavioral finance for it called anchoring. Researchers studying app-based investors found something genuinely unfortunate. The size of your first investment becomes the reference point for every investment that follows. Start with $20 and that becomes your number. Start with $2,000 and that becomes your baseline. So when someone waits to invest until they feel like they can really do it properly, they are setting their anchor point at zero. Their default contribution becomes nothing permanently. They are not waiting, they are choosing, and the part nobody wants to sit with. The reason you have not started is not that you cannot afford $100. It is that starting small makes you feel small. You would rather feel like the kind of person who is about to invest $10,000 than actually be the person who is investing $100 right now. Both versions of that person exist somewhere. Only one of them is real. Meanwhile, the person who dropped $100 into an index fund at 24 has already established the identity. I am someone who invests every month. That is the default now. Everything else compounds off that one quiet decision. All right, now we get to the part I mentioned at the top. The thing about year 9, because there is a specific moment, an actual specific month, where your investment account stops functioning like a savings account and starts operating like a machine that runs without you. The crossover. Almost nobody talks about it because it is not dramatic and it does not fit in a short clip. Here is how it works. Every year you put in $1,200, $100 a month, 12 months. That is your contribution. For the early years, the market gives you back very little, about $48 in year 1, maybe $500 by year 5. You are still doing most of the heavy lifting. In year 8, you put in $1,200 and the market gives you back roughly $1,070. You are still contributing more than you're earning. Then year 9 happens. In year 9, you put in your $1,200 and the market, without any announcement, gives you back $1,259. For the first time ever, your money earned more in a year than you personally put in. Your investment is now doing more work than you are. You have crossed over. Nobody throws you a party. Nothing changes visually. Your account does not send you a notification. The S&P 500 does not call you to say congratulations. You would not even notice it unless you were tracking the numbers closely. But somewhere around month 104, your entire financial trajectory quietly shifts direction. Before the crossover, you are an investor doing work. After the crossover, you are a passenger inside your own portfolio. And here is the part that compounds even harder than the money. Every single year after that, the gap gets wider. By year 20, the account is earning 4 to 5 times your annual contribution in a single year. By year 30, it is earning 10 times. The math does not accelerate gradually, it accelerates exponentially, which really just means this gets out of hand fast in the best possible way. The crossover is exactly why the guy on the porch in the opening story is on that porch. He did not out-earn his friend. He did not land a better job or make smarter career moves. He just reached year 9 and then year 15 and then year 25 while his friend was still looking for the right moment to begin. I want to slow down here because I think this is the section most people breeze past. The version of you that never starts is a real person. That version exists somewhere ahead of you. And right now in their head, they are 58 years old at a kitchen table on a Tuesday night, refreshing a 401k balance and doing the math on how many more years of work they need before they can stop. And the answer they keep landing on is too many. That is not a hypothetical. That is just what the numbers produce when you run, I'll start next year forward for 30 years in a row. And here's the statistic that should genuinely be uncomfortable to say out loud. The median 401k balance at Vanguard right now, and Vanguard has roughly 5 million participants, so this is a real large-scale number, is $38,176 median. Half of every American worker with a 401k has less than that sitting in it. If you invested $100 a month at 8%, you would clear $38,000 in 16 years. 16 years, a habit smaller than your phone bill, maintained for slightly longer than the full lifespan of a Toyota Camry, outpaces half of every working American who has a 401k. I'm not saying this to be smug about it. I'm saying it because most people genuinely believe the folks maxing out retirement accounts are running away from them at an impossible pace. They are not. According to Bankrate's 2025 Emergency Savings Survey, 59% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency with available cash. 27% have zero emergency savings at all. Your competition is statistically one flat tire away from putting it on a credit card. When you invest $100 a month, you are not playing the same game as the average American. They are playing checkers with a stack of overdue bills. You are playing chess against a 40-year compounding curve. The 58-year-old at that kitchen table does not have to be you, but that version becomes more real every single month you don't start. All right, take a breath. I want to pull back from the math for a second because the portfolio numbers are honestly the least interesting part of this. The actually important thing is what happens to you, not the account. To you as a person. When you start putting $100 a month into an index fund, you cross a line you cannot uncross. You become an investor. And being an investor is a completely different internal identity than being a saver or a spender or someone who is loosely hoping their finances work out without any real plan behind them. Here is what genuinely shifts. You start noticing expense ratios. You start caring about the difference between a target date fund charging 0.6% and one charging 0.03%. You start understanding in your bones why that gap matters because over 30 years, a 1% fee difference will quietly extract about $23,000 from your account. That is someone's wedding. That is a year of college tuition gone to a management fee for someone doing essentially nothing for you. Your spending starts to look different to you too because you now carry a mental conversion rate everywhere. $100 stops being just a dinner out. It becomes $1,060 in future purchasing power 30 years from now at 8%, which is a strange and slightly inconvenient way to look at a steak dinner, but once that lens is on, you cannot take it off. And here is a behavioral research finding that genuinely changed how I think about all of this. I Empower surveyed people on financial satisfaction and found that 74% believe more money would fix their core problems. But when people actually received a windfall, something like $5,000, the happiness it generated lasted about 6 months. 6 months. Think about how many things you have bought for yourself as a treat that didn't outlive the receipt. Now, quick objection I hear constantly. What about market crashes? The market is too unpredictable right now to put money in. JP Morgan ran the numbers in their 2025 Guide to Retirement. Over the last 20 years, the S&P 500 returned 10.6% annualized. If you missed just the 10 best trading days in that entire stretch, your return dropped to 6.4%. Miss the 20 best days, and you're at 3.7%. Miss 30 best days, and you're below 2%. Miss 40, and you're in negative territory. The critical detail is that the best trading days cluster within 2 weeks of the worst days. So every time you sell during a crash and sit in cash waiting for things to calm down, you are statistically the person who turns off the oven right before the food is ready. Time in the market, not timing the market. That is the whole game, start to finish. I want to walk you through 3 real people because abstract math is one thing, but actual humans live in specifics. The first is Yara, 22, just out of school, working a $42,000 entry-level marketing job in Columbus, Ohio. No financial advisor, no wealthy family. What she has is a Roth IRA she opened on her phone in 12 minutes and a $100 automatic contribution that hits the day after every payday. Yara does not monitor her account, by the way. She forgets her login password and has to reset it a couple of times a year. That is the full extent of her involvement. She never increases the $100. She never adjusts the strategy. She just buys a total market index fund for 43 years. By 65, she is sitting on roughly $447,000 at an 8% return, or around $823,000 at the S&P 500's long-run average of 10%, and it is all tax-free because Roth. Yara is not exceptional. She is not particularly disciplined. She is just on auto pay. The second person is Jen, 35, single mom, 2 kids, just landed her first real job that comes with actual benefits. Her employer matches 50% of her 401k contribution up to a limit. She puts in $100 a month. The employer adds $50 on top of that. So her effective monthly contribution is $150. Jen set this up on her lunch break in a Wendy's parking lot. Frosty in one hand, phone in the other. That was the moment the decision got made. She didn't tell anyone, she didn't celebrate it, she just did it and went back to eating. 30 years of that at 8% gets her to about $223,000. Her actual out-of-pocket contribution was $36,000. The rest is the employer match plus compound growth stacked on top of each other for 3 decades. She more than doubles the median 401k balance for Americans aged 55 to 64 by being a late starter who simply showed up consistently. The employer match is not a nice benefit. It is a mathematical weapon, and most people are leaving it sitting on the table. The third person is Mark. He is 50 years old and has been saying he'll start next year since 2002. What finally broke the cycle? A comment his brother-in-law made at a backyard cookout. Something about being the kind of guy who never actually starts. It stuck in a way he couldn't shake. 3 weeks later, Mark opened a brokerage account. 20 years later, at 70, Mark has about $58,000 at 8%, or $76,000 at 10%. Is that a full retirement? No, Mark is not booking a yacht. But here's the piece Mark could not see until he actually did the math. He still beats the median 401k balance for Americans in their mid-40s to mid-50s, despite starting 28 years behind the curve on the most unheroic schedule imaginable. Late is better than never by a 5-figure margin, and it turns out brothers-in-law occasionally earn their keep. Here is where I want to get a little more direct, because I think this is the piece most people skip past when they hear this kind of thing. A $100 a month is not really a financial decision. It is an identity decision. You are not choosing what to do with $1,200 a year. You are choosing who you are in relation to money. You are deciding whether you participate in the economy as an owner or only as a worker. Owners have their money generating returns while they sleep. Workers trade time for dollars and reset the clock every Monday morning. These are 2 genuinely different lives. There is also a quieter cost most people never actually count. If you are 31 and you have not started yet, you have already given up roughly $40,000 compared to the version of you that started at 22. That money is not recoverable. It is gone. But the version of this conversation where you are 41 and still have not moved is the one I'm most interested in preventing right now. And the most remarkable thing about the system we live in is that the door to becoming an owner is unlocked. It costs $100 to walk through it. It takes 15 minutes to set up. The brokerage accounts are free. Index fund expense ratios are less than 0.1%. Fractional shares mean you can own a piece of every company in the S&P 500 with what you'd spend on a single round of drinks at a bar. The door is wide open, and most people spend 30 years standing in front of it searching online for confirmation that the door is real. While the people who walk through it at 22 are quietly sitting on 6-figure portfolios they barely think about. Warren Buffett described compounding as a snowball. The trick, he said, is finding a very long hill, which means starting young or living a very long time, or ideally both. $100 a month is you packing your first snowball. It is small. It is honestly a little embarrassing. It barely moves for the first couple of years. It just kind of sits there collecting snow at a pace that does not feel like anything, but the hill is 40 years long, and if you give that snowball 40 years on that hill, it does not arrive at the bottom as a snowball anymore. It arrives as something that would genuinely stop traffic. Now here's the practical part, because if you have watched this far and you walk away without doing anything, I have not actually done my job. Step 1, open a brokerage account, Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, any of the major ones. It takes 15 minutes. You can do it from your phone in the time it would normally take you to scroll through a social feed, convincing yourself everyone else is doing better. Step 2, inside that account, open a Roth IRA if you're under the income limit. If you have a 401k with an employer match at work, use that first up to the match. Free money comes before anything else. One important note, if you are carrying credit card debt at 24% APR, pay that down before investing in anything outside the 401k match. No market return on earth consistently beats credit card interest, but always take the employer match regardless. A 50% instant return on your money beats every debt rate out there. Step 3, pick one fund, just one. A total market index fund or an S&P 500 index fund. VTI, VFIAX, FZROX. The names are not what matter. They are all essentially the same boring, reliable vehicle. Step 4, set up an automatic transfer of $100 a month timed for the day after payday before your brain has an opportunity to redirect that money somewhere else. Before the part of your mind that says, let's do it next month, gets a vote. Step 5, do not check it obsessively. Seriously. Once a quarter is fine. Once a year is honestly better. Every time you open the app, you are going to feel the impulse to do something with it. And doing nothing is the entire strategy. The entire strategy is to be intentionally inactive, to be a sleeping investor for 40 years and let the math do what the math does. 5 steps, roughly 20 minutes of your life, and then you go back to exactly the life you are already living. Same job, same apartment, same takeout order, and somewhere in the background, the snowball starts rolling down the hill. Remember those 2 friends from the beginning, same job, same apartment, same loans, same starting line. The one retired at 62 on a paid-off porch, and the one still working at 64 at the kitchen table. Here's the thing I left out of the opening. They had the exact same conversation about a video exactly like this one. Both of them watched it. Both of them saw the math. Both of them understood what the crossover meant. Both of them made it to the end. Only one of them set up the auto pay. That is the entire game right there in one sentence. $100 a month is not an investment strategy in the traditional sense. It is a vote. Every month on AutoPay, you are casting a vote for which version of yourself ends up winning over the long run. Cast that vote enough times in a row, consistently and without drama, and the version of you that wins is the one who did not wait for permission to start. The best time was 20 years ago. The next best time is before this video is over. One last thing before I let you go. If you watched this entire video and found yourself thinking, who is actually making content like this and how does that work as a business? That is a question I get consistently. So I put together a free community where I walk people through exactly how to do it, how to find and research a topic like this one, how to write a script that actually holds somebody's attention for 20 minutes, how to build a faceless YouTube channel that generates income while you are not working. Same compounding logic, completely different asset class. It is free, and the link is in the description. No pressure if that's not where your head is at right now. Everything else in this video stands completely on its own. But if you watched any of this thinking you could do something like it yourself, you probably can. And I would rather show you the path than have you spend 2 years piecing it together alone. Either way, the core point stands. I am not a financial advisor. Everything here is educational, and what you get out of it depends entirely on what you actually do with it. But the math is the math, and the math has absolutely no interest in whether you believe it or not. It just keeps running either way.